I got a question yesterday from like a British interviewer that was like, "Are you stuck writing trans stories now forever?" And I was like, it like kind of shocked me, that question. Not only in terms of like, well, is that so bad, but also like, dude, I just gave you a lumberjack story. Like
Right.
obviously trans
Right.
stories can do anything. We'll see what readers think of it, but people are like seem to be down to like go with me on that.
Yeah.
And that makes me feel like if I want to do something else a little like, surprising, people might come with me. And
Yeah.
that's what you want as a writer. It's just like that freedom to be like, let me try something out.
Welcome to The Stacks, a podcast about books and the people who read them. I'm your host, Tracy Thomas, and today I'm thrilled to welcome to the podcast Torrey Peters. Torrey's first book, the critically acclaimed novel Detransition Baby, was picked as a top 10 book of 2021 right here on the Stacks podcast. Her latest book, Stag Dance, is a collection of 3 short stories and 1 novella that explores trans identity, power, and transformation. Today, Torrey and I talk about the relationship between genre and gender, how she freed herself to write again after the success of Detransition Baby, and what she is most interested in exploring as she tells trans stories. Don't forget, our book club pick for March is They Were Her Property, White Women as Slave Owners in the American South by Stephanie E. Jones Rogers. We will be back to discuss that book on Wednesday, March 26th with Tembi Denton Hurst. Be sure to read along and tune in. Quick reminder, everything we talk about on each episode of The Stacks can be found in the link in the show notes. If you love this podcast and you want a little bit more of it, a little inside access, some fun bonus perks, head to patreon.com/thestacks to join the Stacks pack and /or go to tracythomas.substack.com to subscribe to my newsletter, Unstacked. You get a bunch of fun stuff and you get to support the work of this show. All right, now it is time for my conversation with Torrey Peters. All right, everybody, I'm so excited. She's here. It's Torrey Peters, the author of Stag Dance. Torrey, welcome to the Stacks.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
I'm so happy to have you. I read Detransition Baby the year it came out. It made it on the Stacks top 10 books of the year in 2021, and I have just been patiently waiting for whatever was next. It is Stag Dance. It is a joy to have you. Like, I know my listeners are so excited. Everyone keeps bugging me, being like, are you going to get Torrey Peters? I'm like, I hope. But Torrey, we'll start where we always start, which is in about 30 seconds or so. Will you just tell folks what Stag Dance is about?
Sure. It's a quartet of 4 stories, sort of like 3 novellas and 1 short novel, each in a different genre. That each takes on a sort of a different aspect of trans life or just kind of gendered life in general. So that's speculative fiction, teen romance, tall tale Western, and finally a horror.
Yes, I love the collection. I had so much fun thinking about both genre and gender and also how those things maybe are like super connected.
Yeah, I think some people would say it's the same word in French or whatever. I've been told.
Oh, is that true?
Yeah, genre is gender in French.
Wow. Let's go back. We'll come back to gender and genre. But for now, I want to know about sort of the process with this book. I read at the end how you've been working, or these stories have been with you for some of them 10 years. So I want to know first what order you wrote them in.
Sure. So I wrote them. The first 2 were part of a project that I was doing in Brooklyn. I moved to Brooklyn to be sort of part of a trans writing scene. And the scene was based around a press called Topside Press. But the problem with having a scene based around the press is that a press can really only do a couple books a year, especially when it's like getting published out of, my ex-boyfriend's living room, which is literally what it was. And there was a lot of hard feelings. It was like, why did they choose those 3 books when there's so many of us who are writing? And so I had this idea that we should all be writing novellas because a novella takes, a couple months to write rather than, or ideally a couple months to write, rather than, a novel, which can take years. And then I self-published my novellas to sort of create this kind of exchange, like you would do with zines with other trans women. So the first 2 that were part of that project were Infect Your Friends and Loved Ones, which is a speculative fiction story in which like sort of two ex-lovers create a contagion that prevents everybody's bodies from producing hormones. And so everybody has to like inject hormones the same way that trans people do. And it's kind of like what happens when everybody has to make the same choice that trans people make. So that was like the first one. And then the second one was called The Masker, which is about kind of the relationship between fetish and trans identity, and which seemed like a very loaded topic that I wanted to take on. And that's a story of like a sort of person who considers themselves like an online sissy who goes in real life to a convention in Vegas and kind of has to make a choice between a trans woman who is pushing kind of respectability politics and like, this is what it means to be a real woman, and the masker, who's a fetishist who wears a like full body silicone woman suit and like comes to Vegas to like party, but lives the rest of his life as a doctor. And it kind of was like, who counts as trans? What and it's set up as a horror story where the decision is sort of horrific either way. If you have to be be respectable all your life, or if you have to live in the closet all your life.
And then when did you write Stag Dance and the college or the high school story, which is my favorite?
Oh, good. That's one of my.
I loved story 2.
I think that might be my favorite too. It's
you're not supposed to tell us your favorite.
I mean, I
love it.
That one was like the easiest to write, which sounds like a slam on it, but actually it was like when something's really easy to write, it's usually like a joy. It's like it's coming like an inspiration.
Right. It just comes out of you easily, and you just like know where you're going and what you're doing.
And that happened for that. So basically the idea was that I was always going to write these novellas in genres. And what happened is I started writing the third one, which was going to be like a soap opera melodrama. And it just turned into Detransition Baby. And that just like totally derailed this project. So, and the thing about a soap opera melodrama is like, that was a terrible choice for a novella because soap operas go on forever.
They go on forever.
They're not like self-contained little things. So, Detransition Baby happened, and it kind of just like totally changed my life, and I had a couple of years where I was doing screenwriting, and at the end of it, I was like, I came back, I was like, maybe I want to do this project again. And then I started the chaser like in the run up to the publication of Detransition Baby. So I kind of had the bones of it. And then I was able to finish that one, really pretty easily. But the problem is with the last one, I had a totally different idea for it than the Western, the Stag Dance, which is the title story. And I just kept on, I felt like it was so hard to write with all the expectations that Detransition Baby put on me. Like it was like, oh, you write these like witty contemporary stories about, like urban femininity and transness. And like, I enjoy that, but I had just spent like 4 years talking about it. And, and every time I kind of got close to that, I felt like just like really kind of crushed by that idea. And I was building a sauna in the woods, and I was just like actually cutting down trees. And I was kind of like, you know what? Like, what if I just wrote something that like nobody was expecting, and like maybe nobody was like thought they wanted, and that would actually free me to like kind of do whatever I want. Cause even if everyone ended up being like, we don't want this, I could be like, well, yeah, of course, it's a bunch of loggers in the woods who nobody was asking for it, but for me, so I ended up writing this whole story in a kind of like logger idiom that ended up for me being like totally freeing. It was a little bit perverse to make that choice, but it was really freeing because number one, I felt like I was writing without any expectations. And number two, all of the ways that people talk about gender and transness that in some ways get a little over-determined or calcified, I had to kind of reinvent them to talk about them like a turn-of-the-century logger would talk about them. So
can you say more about what you mean by that? Like the language that gets calcified, talking about transness, like more specifically?
Sure. Yeah. Like, a word like gender dysphoria, that is something that if you're going on the internet and talking about transness, people will say words like that. And that word, like, comes from the medical world. It is like, it's kind of a discoursey word, like internet discourse, you know? And the thing is, like, a lot of those words just feel dead to me. They're just like you put them in a fiction piece, and it's just like there's like a clunk in the sentence, you know?
Right.
And so, like, for instance, like the logger, when the logger says, it's basically communicating something that's like dysphoria. He says, "No mirror has ever befriended me," and like I don't really use words like befriend me like as a verb, you know, like please befriend me, you know, like that's not my normal way of speaking. But like I remember, like, you know, times in my life that I've looked in a mirror and been like, this mirror is being mean, you know, like and like that feeling. You know, I never would have really thought to say something like that if I wasn't constrained to like say it so differently than I'd said it most of my life. And so that last one is for me, it's like a very happy departure, but certainly like it's like a new thing for me to write in this way. And I did a lot of research and kind of invented this idiom, and it took me about 1.5 years to like even be able to write in this style.
Wow. I mean, it definitely feels like a departure, not only from Detransition Baby, but also like from the other stories in the book. Like it definitely feels like the title story because it feels so different. Like you start it and you're like, wait a second, as a reader, which, you know, I think is really fun and exciting because I think sometimes in a story collection, because you have to start over so many times, it can feel like you're just restarting the same car over and over. But with this book, and especially with that third story, Stag Dance, it's like, oh, I'm actually starting a totally different vehicle each time. Like your voice changes, your like lead character feels so different each time from one another. And so there's sort of like and I mean this in a good way, sort of like a novelty to each story that is inviting and also like kind of scary for the reader of like, what is this going to be? Like, where are we going?
I mean, I'm glad that one is third because it asks the most of the reader, I think, that one. And like, you know, it was definitely a choice. And I do think that, that there are going to be people who are like, wow, like there's just like 4 words, in this first sentence that I've never heard before. And
I didn't know any of the words. I was like, what the fuck?
And like, you know, to me, a lot of it, the fun of it is actually just like, I mean, I found this dictionary of like logger slang. I should explain at some point what the story's about, but I like was reading this logger slang. And a lot of it was like, the words were just so chewy. They were so like in your mouth. Like the word for chewing tobacco is Scandinavian dynamite, which I think is some like strange way of saying Scandinavian. Like nobody says Scandinavian, right?
No.
And like, and so to just, you know, but it felt to me like what it's like to talk to somebody. Like I like the oftentimes the experience of talking to people who have just like idioms that I don't know, you know?
Yeah.
Like even you just used the metaphor of cars. Like sometimes I go to the car mechanic and the car mechanic like opens up the car and he says like 10 words I don't know.
And you're just like,
and I'm definitely like, I'm very much at the car mechanic. I know it partially because I understand and partially because I don't understand. And that like, I was interested at times of reproducing that experience. Like, of course, if a 19th century logger is talking to you, you don't know every word that he says. And like, that can be uncomfortable, I think, for a reader to be like, you know, because I think the way we're like taught to read is like, oh, if you don't know every word, it's
like look it up,
or it's a reflection on you as a reader. And I, you know, for me, I'm just like, just kind of flow with it. You know, if you don't know a word, like you probably will be fine. Like the main points are I think pretty clear, and the rest of it's texture, you know?
Yeah. I think that's so interesting, Torrey, because now it's my turn to be pretentious. I love Shakespeare. I'm a huge Shakespeare fan. And people are always like, but I don't understand it or I don't get it. And I'm always like, I don't know, just read it out loud and like, just keep going. And then if you really, really don't know, like look at the notes. But I so rarely look at the notes when I read Shakespeare because a lot of it is I just say it out loud and like, let it kind of just like wash over me. And you can, and like the major plot points, you'll figure out because Shakespeare loves to say them over and over. Like, it's not like he's going to like secretly tell you something. He's going to tell you like exactly who Juliet is to Romeo at least 17 times before Act 2. And I sort of feel like that's what happened with this story, because at first I was like, oh my God, I'm so confused. And then I was like, just like go with it. Like, you definitely don't know a single thing about like a lumberjack or a logger, or even like what the difference is between those two kinds of people. So like, just kind of carry on and like see how it goes. And I did switch to audio for a little bit, and the audio reader on Stag Dance, that's the only one I actually listened to parts of, but the audio reader for Stag Dance was so good. And so I think that helped too, of just being like, I don't know what this guy's saying to me, but I love it here. Like, keep talking.
Yeah, he has a good voice. They auditioned
really good
like
voice.
a couple of them. They sent me the audio. So the cool thing that the Random House did for the audio is that they got a different reader for each.
Yes, I
for
saw
each
that
story, and like
I saw that.
that's a production, you know. So I was kind of like, I was a bit honored that I was like, wow, like 4 different actors are interpreting each of the stories, and like gives it. And I was trying to do 4 different voices, and so like, you know, I haven't listened to the audiobook all the way through, but like it just hearing, I'm like, oh, this really actually like augments what I was trying to do.
Yeah. I want to ask you about something you touched on earlier that I'm always curious about authors who have success with their debut, which is like the pressure that you were feeling going into whatever the second book was going to be, and just going back to the page as a writer after Transition Baby was like kind of everywhere. And you mentioned like you sort of wrote Stag Dance as a response to some of that to like free yourself up. Do you feel now more free as a writer? Do you feel like you're able to write again? Or do you feel a lot of stress as this book is now coming into the world?
No, it really freed me. You know, I got a question yesterday from like a British interviewer that was like, are you stuck writing trans stories now forever? And I was like, it like kind of shocked me, that question. Not only in terms of like, well, is that so bad? But also like, dude, I just gave you a lumberjack story. Like, obviously trans stories can do anything. Like,
well, that's like the Toni Morrison question of like, are you only going to write about Black people? Like, that's it. What did she say? You have no idea how profoundly disrespectful or whatever that is. Like,
I should have said that. I should have been like, you've disrespected me, British fan. But I didn't. I was, I just said, I don't think I'm stuck. I'm honored to do it. But, you know, that kind of thing was like, you know, it's like, oh, the stuff that I do, actually, I get to do anything with it. And, you know, we'll see what readers think of it. But so far, like the publisher, the reviews, people are like, seem to be down to like go with me on that. Yeah. And that makes me feel like, okay, well, I want to do, if I want to do something else, a little like, you know, surprising, people might come with me. And that's what you want as a writer. It's just like that freedom to be like, let me try something out. And you know, fair if people don't want to always go with you on it, but like it felt better than sort of like making the same joke over and over and over to diminishing returns, which is what I think I started doing after Detransition Baby.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right, because I wasn't sure what to expect with this book. And I'm like fascinated by Torrey Peters' horror writer, right? Like The Masker was so like icky. I don't know how to explain it, but it really like is sticky and gross, and like I just like hated it. And I was like, how is she doing this to me? Right? Like, and so I think not only did you maybe free yourself up, but I think you freed your audience up to like not know what to expect from you, right? Like, you've now given us 5 stories in 5 different, extremely different genres really well. And so for me as a reader, I'm like, whatever she does next, like we absolutely have to read, even if it's a repeat of one of these 5 previous ones. Like, I want to see you do it again, or like see you do it in a different way. And so I think you sort of told us to like back off a little bit in some ways.
Well, that's nice it's nice that you heard my subtext. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, I got you.
Back off, everyone.
Yeah,
no,
like leave me alone.
I'm so thrilled actually that people are willing to come along. It's like, and then I do think that like it was I needed to write something like this, and I'm proud of it. Mm-hmm. Like, it wasn't just like a therapy thing to write about lumberjacks for 2 years.
No, it's good on its own. It's good on its own.
But it was, you know, like it kind of also, it gave me confidence, you know, like I want to, I have like ambitions for like, I want to write a big novel next, and it's sort of like, well, I now feel like, okay, I can do voices. Like I can do, I'd never done anything like that before. So now I feel like, okay, I can do different voices. Like, and like, like next time I take on a big novel, I have those with me now. And it makes me excited to do more things. It is absolutely freeing,
I love that. I have maybe a stupid question, but what's the difference to you between novel, novella, and story?
Okay. So the thing about these pieces, which I almost like use like pieces on my own when I'm talking about it, is that they're actually kind of none of those things. Like,
okay,
like
say more.
I think that the three ostensibly short stories in the piece that are novellas are all around 15,000 to 17,000 words. That is like an unpublishable length in most publishing industries. Like if you want to get a story in a magazine, it should be like, 5,000 words is like a good sized story. Like 8,000 is like, you're a star of the literary scene, that you're taking up this much space in our magazine. 17,000 is like, what, you want half our magazine for your story? Like they don't give it to you. Meanwhile, 17,000 is way too short for a book. People will be like, "What? I'm not buying this pamphlet." And so, so like for me, it turns out like I actually like letting the stories kind of be the length that they want to be. And so what you have in this thing are three things that I guess you might call like a novel. Like in the actual word count, this length is like novelette, which is a word that nobody uses. So if I'd been like, I wrote some novelettes, they'd be like, you are confused about how to end that word novel, and so like Stag Dance is 42,000. So when I say thousand, I mean 42,000 words is what I'm referring to. So Stag Dance, according to Random House's like word count, counts as a novel, but it's like only 2,000 over. So like if you got it, you'd be like, that's so short. But like for me, like the fun of actually having all these stories is that like I can create a substantial book out of a series of things that are the length that they want to be, outside of sort of like the apparatus of the publishing industry. And I can let the stories be the stories that they want, that they should be, which is how people used to write before everything got kind of streamlined. I like that I got to kind of do this interesting lengths of pieces because I do think that they end up resonating with each other.
Yeah. Yeah. I just was curious because I was calling them stories in a novella, but then when I got it, it says novel and stories. And I was like, well, I don't know the difference at this point. I'm like, I don't know. I don't think it matters. I think is really the true answer. Yeah.
Like the funny thing is that's the American book says a novel and stories. The British, when the Americans sent over to the British novel and stories, they're like, oh no, we're not going to say that's awkward.
Did they just say stories?
They said a quartet.
Oh, okay. And I like that.
That's nice. That's elegant. The Germans said, I don't know the German for it, but they said a figure in four, which was like,
oh wait, I like that the Germans. Best. That's very Stag Dance. Yeah. A figure in four is like that's what you would use in Stag Dance. The story,
So it's like it's kind of what the stories are, not only just like what you think. It's also apparently like where in the world you are, which is fun to do.
Okay, let's take a quick break and come back and talk some more. Valentine's Day is upon us, and I've got love on the brain. Love for books, duh, of course. Hello. Did you forget what podcast you're listening to? I love bringing you all great reads, exclusive author interviews, and behind-the-scenes book gossip. But I can only do that with your support over on Patreon and Substack. Our Stacks Patreon community, also known as the Stacks Pack, is where you can go for book club meetups, a private, very active Discord, and a year-long mega reading challenge to help you achieve all your reading goals. Plus, you also get that monthly bonus episode. Now, over on the Substack, you can subscribe to my newsletter, Unstacked, where I keep the book conversations going. I also give you a healthy dose of sports and pop culture, definitely some hot takes happening over there. And again, that bonus episode. If you don't have a few dollars to spare, don't worry. There are free options on the Substack and the Patreon to get you a little extra Stacks magic. Making this podcast is a total team effort, and by supporting my Patreon and my Substack, you allow me to support my amazing team that makes the show possible every single week. So if you or your friends are looking to meet other book lovers and support this indie podcast, come hang out with me on Patreon, Substack, or both. I would love to have you. And since we're talking about love, you can gift subscriptions to the Patreon and the Substack for that special reader in your life. For the Stacks Pack, head to patreon.com/thestacks. And for the newsletter, head to tracythomas.substack.com. And also, there are links to both in the show notes. Okay, see you in the Stacks. Okay, we're back. I want to talk now about gender and genre. Apparently, same word, different language, speaking of where you are in the world. Okay, you got that question of like, are you done writing about trans things yet? Which, so fucking rude. Like, sorry to that man. You didn't say it, I said it. Don't worry. You're not in trouble. I'll get in trouble. But I think what's really interesting about what you do in this book is like you make us think about both gender and genre as things that are not the way that we are told to think about them. I mean, I think subverting is maybe like the way that a normal person would say that last sentence. And I'm wondering, like, as you're writing these stories, how much of it is you saying, I want to subvert gender norms, I want to subvert genre norms, and how much of it is you saying, this character is talking to me about this thing? Like how do you approach? Because I know some writers are like, I sit down, I don't know what's going to happen, and the character tells me everything. And some writers are like, I have a story in my head, I outline it, I want to say these points, I'm trying to get this across. So how are you thinking about kind of what you're doing?
I mean, I mostly am looking for what feels to me like an emotional truth,
Okay.
and then I'm moving from there. So, there is the way that you're supposed to, I wasn't like sort of like, oh, look at me, I'm so transgressive. It was more like,
right.
It was more like, there's the way that I think one is, taught to talk about gender. And then there's the way that it feels emotionally. And those two things are not always the same.
Okay.
So like, let's say even like just something as basic as like a transgender identity. And to me, transgender identity only matters insofar as like it creates a kind of political solidarity. But the idea that like, that there's some common thing that's like an intrinsic to like a trans experience that you must have in order to be trans is something that like, it just doesn't feel real to me. And so the stories kind of all push against it. And I sometimes say about this collection that like, people think of trans as like breaking apart sort of like a male-female binary, but I'm much more interested in breaking apart a cis-trans binary, where at what point does a cisgender person become transgender?
Right.
Who gets to decide who's transgender? And that in fact, when I think about these stories, much of the emotional building blocks in them that you'd use to say this character is trans. And by the way, very, very, only I think like 3 or 4 characters in the whole book actually like identify as trans. Everyone else is just kind of like having weird gender feelings. But the building blocks that you'd say like, oh, this character might be trans, are actually the building blocks that like we're all kind of experiencing. I think things like, desire, the difference between, the way you want to be seen by the world and the way that the world sees you, and the frustration of that like space. Definitely feelings of shame and how are you going to live up to expectations of who you should be, feelings of regret, what you give up when you make a choice. These are the things that like to me make a trans experience. But it's ironic because they're also the things that make an experience for everybody else,
Any human being ever.
Like you think about my thing recently was like watching all the right-wing guys like wave chainsaws on stage, having just written about loggers,
Yeah.
And like basically what they're trying to do is like be like, look at me, I'm like a rugged guy.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh no, like what you want to be saying and what you're saying is a big difference. And that like, and that actually like that trans people have language for what's going on with your performance right now with your chainsaw. and the way that it's like kind of failing, and the feelings of, the bad feelings that I'm sure happen when you wave a chainsaw and you don't, and no one is impressed,
Yeah.
and that kind of, the questions around, the body that you might have and what you wish the body would say about you, versus, I thinking about it again, like, how much people complain about how tall they are in their dating profile. Like,
right.
Am I seen the way that I want to be seen? And how come 4 inches makes such a big difference? That's a body question, same as a trans body question. And these like, I don't think that there's anything particularly other about the trans experience. And that makes that basically inflects the way I write, because it feels true to me, not because I'm like, I want to change the paradigm or something.
Right. Is there any part like I think about this a lot as like a Black woman. I'm like, there are some things about like Blackness that people are really interested in that are super boring to me.
Yeah.
Do you feel like there are things about like transness, air quotes, that are like that you're asked about, or that people expect from you, that you're like, that is the least interesting part of this to me as a writer, as a trans woman, just in general?
I mean, I think like, you get asked a lot about like, surgeries and hormones and stuff like that.
Sure.
And like, at some point that becomes very boring because like, I've been giving myself a shot every week for 10 years. And it's just like,
right.
It's like, it's like brushing your teeth or something.
Yeah.
It's like how many conversations do you want to have about how you brush your teeth? Not
right.
many.
None, actually.
And not because you're like, oh, it's, I think there's a way people are like, that's so invasive of my space. But really it's just sort of like, I don't care about brushing my,
Right. Like, it's just like such a non part of my life. It's a
non thing. But, I think that the other thing is that like, I think it's the framing that I get bored of, where like the trans experience is this particular thing, people be like,
right.
Oh, what kind of like gender augmenting surgeries did you have? And it's like, everybody's doing gender augmenting surgeries all the time. That's what cosmetic surgery is, whether you're trans or not,
right.
And so like, the frame, I get so tired of the framing where it's like, oh, what surgeries are you going to have to be a woman? And it's like, someone will ask me that who's had like a nose job and collagen,
right.
injections. And it's like, what interventions did you have to be a woman?
Yes.
Like
right.
We're both doing it,
right.
And that,
right.
And like that kind of like awareness of like the thing you're asking me about as alien is the thing that you actually already know the answer to. And not only the intellectual answer to, the emotional answer to it,
Yeah. Yeah. That's so interesting.
Yeah. I'm feeling what like, it's like, I just want to say to people like, I'm feeling what you're feeling,
yes.
like that's like, what's going on.
Yes. It's whatever you're doing, whyever you're doing it is I'm doing it. Yeah. No, totally. That makes so much sense. Okay. I want to go back to genre. I'm obsessed with genre. It's like, because I never thought about it at all before I started working in books. And it comes up so much in like the publishing world. It's how people sort of, market themselves or position themselves, even though it's not always how the people who are writing or the creatives think about the work as they're doing it. It's sort of something that sometimes can come after the fact. And I think that's really interesting. I think it's like, putting those rules on something, like trying to fit something into a specific slot. But I'm wondering, like, when you were writing these stories and because you were working towards these genres, like you said, you kind of knew what you were doing. Did you feel like it helped you or made anything more or less clear in thinking about genre as a writer?
Yeah, I mean, I think genre works really well because it gives you kind of shortcuts at times. Like, like there's a script, right? And like what's fun about a genre is the way that you deviate from the script, not so much the way that you follow it. And so, for instance, in like Infect Your Friends and Loved Ones, which is a post-apocalyptic story, everybody's already seen Mad Max. They've seen The Road. They've seen all this sort of stuff.
I've not seen any of these things, Torrey.
So you're just not everybody.
I'm not anybody, actually. I'm a nobody.
I've disappeared you. Just talking to myself on this podcast. Okay, so let's see, what post-apocalyptic stories
But
have you seen?
I mean, yes, I've seen post-apocalyptic
Yeah.
things.
So,
I know Station 11. I
yeah.
saw a few episodes of, what is that, The Last of Us.
Perfect. Okay.
I love Parable
That's what
of
I
the
meant.
Sower. Yeah,
everybody,
those are my touchstones.
everybody knows those. That's
well, anybody who's anybody has seen the three things that I just named. Everybody else might have seen the other things, but also nobody's.
Okay, so in The Last of Us, for instance, like people have seen enough that like if like there's hunters on the road, right? Like I can just say that sentence, and if you're in the post-apocalyptic genre, I don't have to do any more, right?
Yeah.
Where like if I'm doing like realist fiction, I have to be like, here's these guys, and like they've been looking for a cow to eat for 5 days, something like that.
Right.
And if everyone knows the genre rules, I say there's hunters on the road, and then I don't have to do anything more. I can just go on to the thing that I care about, which is like the relationship between my characters. And the only thing that matters is sort of like the way I'm diverting from the typical post-apocalyptic thing. And anything else, I'm just sort of like, yeah, you know this. Like I don't have to spend time on it, and we can stick entirely to the interesting stuff, and it like moves the plot forward so easily. So it's the same sort of in The Chaser, where it's a teen romance where it's sort of like a bro, like an athlete, a jock or whatever, who gets put at boarding school with his roommate, Robbie, who's like feminine and like maybe is like a pre-transition trans woman, although like the characters don't know kind of what they're feeling, which is important to me, to like not know, have them know everything. And in that, like so much of what I was thinking about were like these kind of homosocial boarding school novels, like Brideshead Revisited, A Separate Piece, mixed with kind of like Twilight, where it's like there's one character who's got a lot of yearning for something that is forbidden, and like that's the formula, right? And so then it's like what matters is not all of it. It's like that provides me a framework with a bunch of shortcuts to then just make it mine. That I kind of love that stuff.
Yeah. God, I love The Chaser. I like when you were writing, I guess that story in particular, but more broadly, all of the things that you've written, do you know, like how much do you know about where you're going?
Both The Chaser and Stag Dance, I had an idea of where I was going, and then I ended up going somewhere totally different. The Chaser, for instance, there's some stuff that there's some moments of violence that come in the middle of the story, and they're kind of like that's an upsetting scene. And in my initial version, the story ended like right there, where it was sort of like a little bit. It was like the thing. It's a little bit what The Masker does, where you sort of like punch your audience in the stomach and then walk away. You know? And I did that because it was like a move that I knew how to do, and then. Actually, that story sat for like a year, and I was like, you know what? That actually doesn't feel like emotionally right. Like that doesn't feel like what I want to do. It doesn't feel like what these characters want. Like it feels like they need to at least give a try to saying what they really want from each other, and to, and the point of the story is not sort of that whether or not they get together in the end, but like whether or not they can just be honest with each other and like stop telling each other kind of lies. And that to me just felt so much more emotionally true. And so there's a full third more of the story from where I initially ended it. Stag Dance, I got really into like, okay, so let me just explain the plot of Stag Dance really quickly for your readers. So the plot of Stag Dance is that there's a bunch of men in an illegal logging camp where it's on government land, and they go there in the winter when the ground is frozen so they can drag the logs, and they cut as many logs as they can around the turn of the century and drag them out before spring when the timber inspectors come. And they're super lonely in the woods, and like they're grumpy, and so they decide to have a dance where some of the men can attend the dance as a woman. And to do that, you cut out this like triangle of brown fabric and hang it over your crotch, which by the way is a historical thing that they did. And then they have a dance, and the plot of the story is that there's one logger who's named Babe Bunyan, who's like
great name
Bunyan because of because of the Axeman of legend. He's like on that
Paul.
side. Yeah,
Ever heard of him?
Yeah, and he's Babe because Babe had an ox and he's as ugly as an ox. And he decides that he wants to go to the dance as a woman. And he gets like really jealous of like the younger, prettier loggers who like other people want to go to the dance as a woman. And like, you know, it all kind of falls into chaos, you know, when he decides to, when the strongest Axeman decides to go to the dance as a woman. But I got like really involved into like, what is the economy of getting these logs out? And I was like, oh, this is going to be so great. It's going to be like a gangster epic only with logs or something like that. And then about like halfway through, I was like, I don't know if this is working. And I looked at it and I realized I was like, oh no, this is a high school dance movie in a set in a Western where it's like Carrie. It's like,
She's all that.
Like, 10 Things I Hate About You. It's like it all builds up to the big dance, and that there was something really funny to me about these loggers having like a high school dance, you know, kind of setup, which is just like another genre, right? Like sticking a high school dance in a Western, like the incongruity of that was like amused me, and so I kind of just like jettisoned the whole ending and was like, now it's a high school dance movie set in an illegal logging camp. And it for me, it totally worked that way. And it was like really fun to do it that way.
You know what's so funny as I'm thinking about all of the stories? They're all sort of just high school stories. Like The Masker is definitely, there's a high school version of this story that's like, who are you going to be with, the cool kids? Are you going to, you know, like it's like that same, I don't know. I feel like there's definitely that like Mean Girls. I feel like Infect Your Friends and Lovers has like Mean Girl vibes. It could, you know?
Yeah. I think there's I think the two things that it feels like are, you know, something I like especially in doing a short story, right, is to do like an enclosed world, right?
Yeah.
And high school stories are like a perfect example of like an enclosed world. Like sometimes family stories are that way, or even like, you know, mysteries are oftentimes like stick 12 people in a locked room and which one of them did the murder, right?
Yes.
Like you can, by having these like almost like nothing outside of the world, you can pressurize it so much. And so that's a trick that I don't think I did in Detransition Baby, but I do it in shorter form fiction for sure. And I think the other thing is that I'm interested in cruelty. I mean, I would say that the cruelty that I'm interested in is more like sisterly cruelty, that like you have to like love somebody and be intimate with somebody in order to be cruel to them. And, you know, that to me feels a lot like my relationship with other trans women. Not that like we're you know, walking around always cruel to each other, but there's the kind of recognition and kinship of a sisterly relationship that makes us vulnerable to each other and therefore vulnerable to betrayal and cruelty.
Yeah. Like intra-community relations, like that intimacy leads to the cruelty, or like leaves you vulnerable to it, I think is
right.
Yeah.
And something I'm interested. I mean, I think other trans writers are like, you know, I'm not going to have trans women being cruel to each other all the time. And I'm just like, yes, let's do it.
But that, again, speaking to your earlier point, that might be true in like your trans experience or whatever, but like that's also true in every community, right? Like I was a drama kid. Talk about intimacy leading to cruelty. You know what I mean? Like it's like any community, any like really, you know, intense community that you're a part of can lead to that, because there is the vulnerability and like sort of the connection that you have to forge to really be part of that community.
Yeah.
And then there's the mean people.
And I think you're totally right about that.
Destroy your life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're completely right. And thank you.
Which just speaks to your earlier point of like, it's all the same shit. It's just like different, you know.
Yeah, different lenses. Different
lenses, different boxes. Okay, speaking of names, we talked about Babe Bunyan. How do you name your characters? Where do the names come from for you? And do they stick usually?
Sometimes they do. Like, I feel that I don't have a great sense of like naming conventions. Like in Stag Dance, for instance, the characters all did have different names. And then I started like looking at like the actual names of logger names. And there was so much, like historically, it would be like, you know, stories about loggers. And loggers would be like, Three Finger James came over, and it was like, whoa, you guys really just called each other that? Like, you know, and I was like, well, this is funny. Like, I would never name a character that sort of thing, but apparently that's what loggers did. And so like, I
Gotta
actually,
do it.
yeah, like I had like kind of like reasonable names in the first draft of Stag Dance. And then I was like, I guess I need ridiculous names for all these characters. So I renamed those characters. I'm really bad at naming narrators. Like a lot of times my first person narrators are kind of like nameless. And I kind of enjoy doing first person narrative about gender stuff in short stories because you don't have to use any pronouns. So it can all be kind of like indeterminate. It's just I all the time. But that doesn't totally answer your question. I think it's story by story. And as I'm getting more into things like the sound of language, I am paying more attention to like, does a character's name flow, when you say it? Yeah. Whereas I think like in Infect Your Friends and Loved Ones, I just chose names that were like common trans girl names at that time. Like Lexi, I knew so many Lexis. Okay. And because I think it was like, at the time, there were like a lot of people whose names were originally Alex, and then they transitioned and they started calling themselves Lexi. And like, and that particular like naming convention amongst trans people has totally fallen away. So in some ways, like those naming conventions are like a little bit like relics of the time that I was like thinking about these people.
Right. And the time that the story is set, because it's set a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you like to write? How many hours a day? How often? Music or no? In your home, out in the world? Snacks and beverages? Rituals?
So
tell us about it.
I've like kind of completely changed the way I write in the last couple of years. I used to be the kind of person who, I mean, partly has to do with like, how can you afford to write? Like, if you have a day job, you maybe have to write in a particular way. And since Detransition Baby, I have had much more free time to write. And so I kind of like have been writing seasonally. Okay. And then the other big change, so I'll expand that, but the other big change, which if you read Detransition Baby, I wrote like half of it back when I used to take Adderall. So like, I feel like the first half of it had a kind of like, because the way I was living, I would have like 3 days to myself and then I'd have to like work a bunch and like a kind of emotionally draining work for a couple of days, and I'd have a couple of days to myself. So when I'd have a couple of days to myself, I would take Adderall so I could write for like 8 hours or something. And the flow of those things, like I read them now and it's like, it is a little like, they were initially like a little speedy to me. I'm like, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and and then I stopped midway through writing Detransition Baby, and I started getting like into like meditation and being like, I'm going to write in the morning, and like all these writers I imagined. And the style of the writing changed. Like it got like a lot kind of like, in some ways less intense, but also more playful. There was a lot more humor. And I had to edit that book to make the second half make the first half read like the second half. I actually liked the style of the second half better, but it was totally inflected by like the way I was writing and like my life at the time. And since then, so like I would say that icky intensity that you're talking about in The Masker, in a weird way, my way of writing was like, let me get like super like agitated, like you almost like picture like some like dark German pounding techno music as you're writing this, like it's like icky, sticky, like dark vibe, which was like what I was in, and I think now I spend half the year in Colombia. I'm like eating fruit as I write, like making fresh smoothies, like, and I think I reach for a joke much more than I reach for like a knife. And that is partially like literally how physically comfortable I am as I write versus previously.
I love this for you. This sounds good. Yeah. This sounds really good.
For people who like my dark stories, I'm sorry.
I like the dark stories, but also like, I think maybe you should prioritize you over my personal enjoyment. Yeah. Why Colombia? How did you end up going there for half a year? I started going there. My partner had a sabbatical and we went there during pandemic.
and to Santa Marta on the Caribbean coast. And, like, I don't have a good reason for loving it. I just got there and I was like, I feel like this place is on the same wavelength as me, like, or I'm on the same wavelength as it. It's probably the less egotistical way of saying, saying it. And so then I was like, let's go back. And then we went back, for another winter, and more I've just kind of been going down, and it feels really good in a lot of ways. Also to like a little bit, be able to write about Americans and the trans context for America, outside of kind of like the day-to-day bullshit of like the news and
like actually being here.
Actually, yeah. Like it's like I'll never, I'm not like, oh, I'm gonna, live forever in Colombia or like, write in Spanish or something. Like I'm gonna write stuff that I've written, but to have that sort of mental space has been really good. And in fact, it's been interesting because as I've been down there, I've been reading more Latin American writers, and Latin American writers often historically have been writing in, through moments of repression, and they would do the same thing. They'd go abroad for a couple of years and they'd write about, not in sort of like one-to-one way, but they'd write stories that were about repression in their home, in their own countries while away, and that kind of like perspective that offered. And it feels good to me to be able to step back and be able to see, like, I sometimes say that fiction is like pattern recognition, that actually there's like so much going on then so diffuse in the connections between things. And fiction is about like creating a story that sort of emulates the patterns and movements that are too big otherwise to capture. And in some ways, like being able to step back, you can start to see the larger patterns that you can't see when you're like, has your nose pressed up to the situation.
Like it's like not a magic eye, it's like a quilt or something.
Yeah.
It's like you have to actually have the distance to like see it.
See it, exactly.
So interesting. I love this.
I like your metaphor. So
I'm just building on what you're laying down, okay? You didn't fully answer the part of the question that we care about most here, which is like writing snacks and beverages.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
You mentioned fruit, but like I'm going to need some details.
I'm going to tell you that there's a fruit somebody needs to figure out how to import better to the United States. It is sapote, I think sometimes called mame. It is orange. It looks like a sweet potato, but its taste, and it's like kind of has a starchy consistency, but it's a fruit. It grows on a tree, and it tastes like the best milkshake you've ever had, and it is entirely its own flavor. Like in the same way that, like, if you have like a Jolly Rancher and there's like a cherry and there's a apple, right? Like it's like those are flavors that are just like their own thing.
It's just cherry flavor. It's not cherry. It's like cherry flavor. It's
so cherry.
Yeah.
That it is like, it can be like distilled to a flavor, right?
Right.
Sapote,
like how blue raspberry is just like blue flavored.
Yeah.
Like it's just like the way that the color blue tastes.
But you have to like, it's its own world of flavor.
Yeah.
And you would never, you can create products in that world of flavor. You can have the original fruit in that world of flavor, but it's its own world.
It's its own thing.
You know? And you can't really say like, oh, a cherry is a bit like a raspberry. People will be like, no, it's its own, these are separate worlds. Sapote is its own separate world, but it's like a world that I think we should all visit more.
I'm looking it up right now. Oh, okay. I feel like I have seen this fruit before when I was in Colombia.
Yeah.
This feels familiar to my eyes. Okay, you have officially answered the snack question.
It's available in Florida. I've had,
okay.
I was like, at one time I was in South Florida and there was like somebody selling like popsicles on the side of the road.
Oh, and they had like a sapote flavor.
Yeah, which I didn't know was sapote because I think they call it mame, and someone was like, that's sapote, and I was like, I need it now.
You're like, this is the best.
Like pulled the car over immediately, kind of thing.
Usually when someone answers with a fruit or vegetable as a snack that they eat, I shame them for that. But because you brought a unique fruit and gave a detailed explanation, including the word milkshake, you have passed the snacks and beverages question.
It is absolutely it is a dessert. Like it is a luxury. You luxuriate in a sapote.
Okay.
I'm not. Okay. This is no like I had a bean for a snack or something.
No, that would be you'd be immediately cut off. The interview would be over. What's a word you can never spell correctly on the first try?
Weird. I mess up the I and the E. Yeah, and I use that word a lot too. So I don't understand why I don't just learn it. But it looks the same to me. It just looks like, and if there's not like the red line underneath it,
you'd never know.
I would never know.
Yeah,
and I know the rules about it and everything. It just looks right.
The more you're saying it, I'm like trying to picture in my head, and now I don't know. I think it goes E first.
Yeah, isn't it I before E except after C?
Well, now I don't know. Okay,
but then now, which is weird, right? Like that's the rule, but maybe
weird. Yeah, but weird is different. It's E first. Okay,
so weird breaks the rule that is the rule.
Yeah, well, that's how you should remember. Weird is weird.
Weird,
it's not good. Like normal or whatever.
Yeah. I before E except after C and weird
and weird and whatever I'm thinking is wrong. Correct, currently. Okay, I just have a few more questions for you. For people who love stag dance, what are some other books that you might recommend that are in conversation with what you did?
So I think, what I was trying to do was a kind of like Americana thing. And I think that like, the references there are these books that are a little baggy, like a little hanging out. And, the sort of classic one is Moby Dick, it's a book that's like, it's written in a weird vernacular. And like, you just kind of have to like get into the idea of hanging out in that book, I think that this is not a True Grit, which most people don't read that book. But
so good. I read it last year for the first time. Loved it.
Oh, yeah.
Loved it.
That's another one that's just like, it's like the pleasure of that book is just like hanging out with this character and all of these characters are a little like, they're not dumb, but they're like they're like
simple.
They're simple. They have like, and there's like a comic. There's a comic aspect to what are actually very, very dark stories. Like True Grit is a dark story.
It's a sad like grief book that's like cute and charming.
It's like funny and charming. Yeah, and like
I always say I'm like it was so lovely. I had such a lovely time with Maddie.
It was great when she fell into the cave. That was a good time. That's no spoiler there. That happens at any point in the book. Yeah.
Also, this book is like so old and there's been like 17 movies. So if you don't know what True Grit is at this point.
Yeah, there you go. It's like, so the tone, of that, there was like,
I actually thought of True Grit as I was reading the stag dance story.
I love that. That makes me feel good. I mean, the other things that I think inspired me was A Brief History of Seven Killings by Marlon James, where the story is nothing like that, but I really liked the way that he was like, it's not exactly like Jamaican dialect. It's something where he's like, it's flavored by that, but I'm actually going to make it totally my own. And I'm going to like remix all of it. And that like permission that I saw that like, cause I initially started writing only like real Lager words like that were, and I tried to like make everything like, get cut out any anachronisms and stuff like that. And then I was like, why am I doing this? Like Marlon James just did whatever he wanted and it was like great to read. Like we're not reading a history book here. We're reading fiction. Like, let's just do whatever is fun. So I did that. And then, and then I started thinking about that. And actually that like all of my favorite books are that do kind of voice they're not like pastiche. They're not super accurate. I mean, I thought about like Blood Meridian and I was like, nobody on the border of Texas and Mexico is speaking in like King James English, like the cadence of that, but he just did it and it kind of like worked. And so like learning to follow like what felt like it worked for me, and knowing that like that those books all have like a very specific reader, and like, and just kind of to be like, this is going to be for a reader who wants to come along on this journey. And all those books were freeing for me, I would say. And therefore in conversation with them, Yeah.
I love that. Okay, just two more quick questions. One is, what's the next genre you want to write in?
I want to start writing a little bit more about like money and like the connections between like transness and politics out there. I mean, there's a weird way in which like transness right now is at the center of this political moment. Like, it's weird.
Yeah.
He didn't choose it.
Right.
Probably would rather not be here, but like, it's like it is. It's like, this kind of right wing system has chosen transness to center and to make it this point. And it's like, and at some point it's like, how's this working? That like people who love crypto also love, are obsessed with transness. And it's like, there's all these connections between these cultural forces around, who has money, who has power, how these things flow, that I'm like, I feel the web, but I can't figure out the story that will hold that. That is like the thing I'm searching for, is like, that's sort of what I mean. Political economy is like, why transness now?
Right.
And can we make it legible in fiction and in story?
Oh my God. Okay. Well, I can't wait to read that. That sounds very, very me. Last question. If you could have one person, dead or alive, read this book, who would you want it to be?
I would say Emily Dickinson.
Ooh, okay. I don't think anyone's ever said her before.
That surprised me that I said that. I was looking out the window and I was like, am I going to say it? I think I'm going to say it. Yeah.
You said it. You did it.
I just think that she's also very like playful with language and like does the kind of like Americana thing. And I think she had like a kind of like, I could be totally wrong with this, but I kind of vaguely remember that she had like a kind of butch thing going, and like, there's like, she's never married and there's stuff with gender going on, and it was kind of her era, like that I was writing into. And so I actually think, probably she would just be like, I don't know what this is and I don't care to, or something, and move on. But, yeah.
Well, her reaction is not important.
Yeah, her reaction, whatever. I don't care what you think, Emily Dickinson.
Yeah, I literally asked you anyways. Yeah. I just sent you the arc. Read it.
Just,
Can you blurb this, please?
Yeah, like, you have a job to do. No one can. So, that's who I would send it to.
I love it. Okay, everybody, go out in the world, get your copy of Stag Dance. You can get it wherever you get books. We already talked about the audiobook. The narrator, at least for the Stag Dance story, fantastic, but there's 3 other narrators. So for my audiobook people, I'm going to vouch for this one. I read a lot of it off the page, vouch for it off the page. It's so good. It's such an interesting dive into genre and gender. Thank you so much for being here, Torrey.
Thank you for having me. This was really, really delightful.
Oh, yay. Everyone else, we will see you in the stacks. All right, y'all, that does it for us this week. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you again to Torrey Peters for joining the show. I'd also like to say a huge thank you to Aaron Richards for helping to make this conversation possible. Remember, our book club pick this month is They Were Her Property by Stephanie E. Jones Rogers, which we will discuss on Wednesday, March 26th with Tembi Denton Hurst. If you love this show and you want inside access to it, head to patreon.com/thestacks to join the Stacks Pack and check out my newsletter at tracythomas.substack.com. Make sure you're subscribed to the Stacks wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you're listening through Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave us a rating and a review. For more from the Stacks, follow us on social media at The Stacks Pod on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok. And check out our website at thestackspodcast.com. This episode of The Stacks was edited by Christian Duenas with production assistance from Megan Caballero. Our graphic designer is Robin McCrite, and our theme music is from Tigirigis. The Stacks is created and produced by me, Tracy Thomas.